guys, it's Lotus and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to continue on with our read-along of Urha, but before that, let me just remind you guys that the fan translation of Urha will be taken down by the end of March, so do go ahead and read it in the description before it's gone. Yeah, but other than that, let's get into the chapter. Chapter 136, Shizun, Relax. Moran was minding his own business, reaping rice, when he suddenly felt a hand from behind pulling his belt down. Quite the shocking feeling, really. Turning around to see that it was Chuaning, who was about to fall over, was even more shocking. Moran hurriedly threw the sickle aside to support him, but it was such a bad fall that Chuaning was practically already halfway on the ground, and a hand in support wouldn't help any, so he had no choice but to hold him up with both arms. That person dressed in floating white robes and smelling faintly of the fragrance of haitang blossoms landed solidly against his chest, and Moran reflexively closed his arms around him in an embrace, the ears of rice previously occupying his arms scattering all over the ground. "Shizun, what are you doing here?" he asked, not yet recovered from the shock. "You scared me." Chuaning, ... "The paddy field is slippery to walk in. Be careful." The person in his arms didn't look up or say anything, feeling so awkward that he couldn't even form any words. But the village maiden continued warbling mercilessly. "I tug at Loverboy's belt. Hey, just when are you coming?" As if struck by lightning, Chuaning abruptly let go of Moran's belt and stood back up on his own feet. He took a breath before suddenly shoving Moran away, and although his expression might pass for calm, his eyes were frightfully bright, like rolling waves catching the sunlight, obviously flustered but still forcefully faking composure. ... Moran suddenly noticed that his earlobes were red. It was a pretty color, a light pinkness in the skin like tender peaches at the tips of branches. He suddenly thought of the way those earlobes had tasted in his mouth as he sucked on them in the previous lifetime, the way Chuaning had trembled slightly every time he had done that, the way that, despite the utmost unwillingness, his steel-boned body had gone soft and pliant in his arms. Moran swallowed, his gaze unconsciously growing deep and dark. But Chuaning was absolutely livid, though it was uncertain whom at, snarling between gritted teeth. "What are you staring at? What is there to look at?" Jolting back to reality, Moran's blood ran cold. Beast! Just what despicable things had he done to Shizun out of his own selfish desire in the past? Shizun was so proud. How could he possibly accept being taken like that? Not only that, but such a dispassionate person as him probably didn't even feel any desire whatsoever to start with. So how dare he even think about these deplorable things again? Moran shook his head over and over again like a rattle drum. Chuaning snapped. "What are you shaking your head for? Having fun?" ... Moran immediately stopped shaking his head, but secretly snuck a glance. Chuaning was clearly embarrassed, but trying to cover it up with this mask called anger as he wanted to do. Now that he was looking closely, it really wasn't difficult to tell from his eyes. He was probably just embarrassed that he had tripped over in front of his own disciple, and due to a ribbiting frog at that. How cute! Moran couldn't help chuckling at the thought. But the chuckling only made Chuaning even angrier, his brows slanting in fury as he flew into a rage. "What are you laughing at? So what if I don't know how to do farming things? What's so funny about that?" "Nothing! Nothing funny! Nope!" Moran coaxed as he tucked his smile away and straightened his face into a serious expression, though he couldn't hide the smile in his eyes, bright and shining with amusement. After a few moments of holding in his laughter, just as it seemed like this matter was about to be dismissed, the frog that had hopped over to the ridge between the paddy fields puffed out its cheeks and croaked out two more self-righteous ribbits, as if in a show of force. Moran fumbled his self-control, tried to turn his face away and cough into his fist to cover it up. But he fumbled that too, and let out a of laughter. ... Chuaning was really going to lose it, dragging his muddied robes behind him as he made for the ridge in a rage. But then he heard Moran call out for him. There was hardly any distance between the two of them. Normally, Moran would have just reached out and grabbed him, but he didn't, because he could still feel Chuaning's warmth against his chest. He could still smell the scent of haitang from Chuaning's robes. His heart felt all mushy like that. His heart felt all mushy like it was about to melt. But he didn't dare allow his heart to melt. This person in front of him was so good, so he wanted to treasure him, to cherish him, to revere him as he would a god. He didn't want to hurt him any more with his own vulgarity, so he only called out to him, "Shizun!" What, not done laughing yet? Chuaning glared at him out of the corners of his eyes. Moran's dimples were filled not with mocking, but gentleness. Do you want to try learning? I'll teach you. It's actually quite simple, and Shizun is so smart. You'll definitely pick it right up. As Moran personally taught him how to reap the rice, Chuaning couldn't help wondering just how things managed to turn out this way. He had come over with the intention of learning by covert observation, so how had he ended up in an official apprenticeship instead? What a mess! But Moran was taking it so seriously and attentively, and didn't even laugh at his clumsy attempts. His brows were inky black, and his features were sharper and more defined than when he was younger. These looks would usually seem handsome yet arrogant, but his gaze was gentle and patient, as if hiding a great many things that weighed on him. Or perhaps hiding nothing at all, only conveying the depth of tenderness, the weight of the years. Just like this! It's all in the wrist, get it? Chuaning tried doing it the way he instructed, but still didn't quite get it right. He was used to working with stiff blocks of wood and whatnot in his work, but these soft ears of grain were somehow harder to deal with. Moran watched from the side for a while, then reached out with a toned, muscular arm and adjusted his grip on the sickle. Skin contacted skin for only an instant. Moran didn't dare touch him more than that, nor did Chuaning dare allow him to touch himself more than that. One was clearly a torrential stream that had nowhere to pour, and the other clearly a pond that was all but dried up. They were clearly a perfect match. If only he would go into him, he would no longer churn restlessly with no outlet, and he could be filled and watered, parched cracks all mended. But they just wouldn't, each hiding from the other. He instructed from behind him, "Put your finger a little lower, careful not to cut yourself." "I know," came the stiff response. "Relax a little, don't be so tense." ... Relax. But the more Moran said that, the more Chuaning's back tensed and his grip stiffened. Relax, relax, relax. It's not like he didn't want to. Easy for him to say. But Moran was hovering right next to him as he spoke, his breath practically caressing the back of his ear, hot and heavy, carrying this man's unique scent of wildness. How was he supposed to relax like this? For some unknown reason, his brain chose this exact moment to remember that shameful dream. They had been in more or less the same position in that dream, with Moran's lips by his ear, touching yet not, ghosting along his earlobe. He had said between panting breaths, "Relax a little, don't clench around me so tight." Chuaning's entire face turned red. He tried his best to get away from these weird thoughts, but a second wave rolled in right on the heels of the first, and he struggled free of these thoughts only to recall that size ranking of the Cultivation World's Young Heroes booklet instead. ... Chuaning was afraid that there might be smoke rising from his head, but Moran was none the wiser. "Why are you so tense? I am quite relaxed." Chuaning whipped his head around, eyes a little watery, yet also filled with flames of anger as he glared at him, so close that it was practically like a sword piercing directly through Moran's heart. Both their hearts were clearly drumming fast in their chests, but however loud the drumming, the other still could not hear, not unless he were to step closer, not unless he were to press his chest against his back, not unless he were to grab his hand, bite his ear, suck on his earlobe, murmur to him between heavy breaths, "Relax, don't be so nervous." Only in this way would they understand each other. But Moran would never, and neither would Chuaning. So Moran awkwardly drew his hand back and strained back up sheepishly, saying, "Then, does Shizun want to try again like this?" Moran flashed him another smile before picking up his own sickle and getting back to work not far away. 2 slices later, he seemed to suddenly remember something, turning to say over his shoulder, "Shizun!" "What?" Chuaning's expression was sullen. Moran pointed at his shoes. "You should take off your shoes." "I will not." "You might slip wearing them," Moran said earnestly. "Those boots have smooth soles. I won't always be there to catch you every time you slip." ... Chuaning molded over gloomily, then walked over to the ridge and took off his shoes and socks, tossing them next to a haystack before walking barefooted back into the paddy field to slog away at the rice. High noon, and Chuaning had finally become more or less proficient with the sickle, his motions growing more fluent. The rice that he and Moran reaped piled into quite a mighty little golden-colored mountain. After harvesting another batch of crops in one go, Chuaning finally felt a little tired, straightening up to take a deep breath and wipe his sweat with the corner of a sleeve. A light breeze swept past golden waves of rain, bringing with it a refreshing autumn chill. He sneezed, and Moran turned around immediately in concern. "Is it cold?" "I'm fine." Chuaning shook his head. Some dust got in my nose just now." Moran smiled and was just about to say something when the clear voice of a village maiden rang out from beneath the mulberry tree in the distance, hands cupped around her mouth as she shouted, "Lunchtime! It's lunchtime!" "It's the lady who was singing earlier," Chuaning commented without even turning to look. Moran turned to the side and lifted a hand to his brow to squint into the distance. "It really is her! Shizun can tell by voice?" All that warbling just to announce mealtime. Who else could it be?" Chuaning brought the last basket of rice over to the pile as he spoke, then headed off toward the mulberry tree, not even bothering with shoes since his feet were already dirty anyway. Moran shook his head with a smile, picking up his abandoned boots before running to catch up. Food was cooked in large pots for the entire village, and 4 or 5 women of the village carried out 3 wooden barrels and opening them to reveal a barrel full of steaming rice, another of braised pork with cabbage, and the last one full of tofu and vegetable soup. Honestly speaking, life for the common folk in the lower cultivation realm wasn't exactly the greatest, and meat was considered a luxury to most people. But Sisheng Peak's cultivators were here, and what kind of host would the village chief be if he fed them nothing but vegetables? And so, there was a hearty portion of cured marbled meat in the pork and cabbage dish. The moment the lids came off, all the big burly villagers smelling the meat had to swallow their drool. "It's not much. Xianjun, please make do." The village chief's wife's was kind of tongue-tied today. "It's not much. Xianjun, please make do." The village chief's wife was a stocky woman, 50-something years old with a loud mouth and a wide, unreserved grin. "We cured the meat and picked the vegetables ourselves. Hope you don't mind." Moran waved his hand in a hurry. "Of course not." He scooped 2 full bowls of rice and handed them to Shizun before getting a 3rd bowl himself. Peeking into the barrel, Chuaning saw that the braised pork with cabbage was covered in a whole layer of chili peppers. He was rather apprehensive at the sight, but the auntie waved him over it with such enthusiasm before scooping a big ladleful of hot, spicy broth and putting many pieces of bright red meat in his bowl. ... It would have been a delicious treat to the people of Shu who love spicy foods, but to Chuaning, this bowl just might be the end of him. But it wasn't like he could decline the hospitality of the villagers either. Chuaning was frozen in uncertainty when a hand reached over and offered him another bowl. The bowl was filled with tofu and vegetable soup. It was kind of plain, but Chuaning liked it. "Here, swap with me," said Moran. "It's fine, eat your own." Chuaning did not take the preferred bowl. The auntie was puzzled for a while by this exchange before she put 2 and 2 together and smacked her head, hollering, "Aiya! Can this Xianjun not eat spicy food?" Seeing the guilt on her face, Chuaning replied, "No, I can eat it a little." Then he picked up some of the broth-soaked rice with his chopsticks and put it in his mouth. ... A few moments passed in silence, Chuaning's face growing redder by the second as everyone watched, and then even the tightly pursed lines of lips began to quiver, until an earth-shaking coughing fit. Who was it that said the only unbearable things in this world were love, destitution, and sneezes? They clearly forgot about chili peppers. Chuaning had woefully underestimated himself. Oh, no, he had woefully overestimated himself and sorely underestimated the chili peppers, choking so bad on the spice that his entire face was beet red and he couldn't speak at all. The onlooking villagers were all aghast, while the kids, being kids, giggled from behind the adults, only to earn themselves swats on the head. Moran hurriedly put down the bowl and chopsticks he was holding and scooped another bowl of soup for him. The soup seemed to help somewhat, but his tongue felt like it was on fire from the hot soup on top of all that spice. His face was flushed and his eyes were watery when he looked up at Moran, saying in a hoarse voice, "More." More? Chuaning clearly meant more soup, but Moran felt his whole body burning up at the sight of those watery eyes, that face the color of high-tongue flowers in early spring, and his mind drifted off course of its own volition. For a brief moment, His mind conjured up an image from the past life of that man lying beneath him, panting from need and the effect of the aphrodisiac both. Eyes open but glazed over and unfocused. Body trembling ever so slightly, voice hoarse as those moist lips parted in soft moans. Please, more. Author's notes. Mini theater. Examples of some things these people can't stand most. Chuaning, eating spicy food. Moran, watching Chuaning eat spicy food. Shimei, participating in a triathlon with his muscles on display. Shuemeng, forced to be gay. Mei Han Shui, the authorities closing down the brothel. Ye Wangxi, marrying Song Shu Tong. Nan Gongzi, his dog dying. Meatbun, working overtime. Okay, so to recap chapter 136, Moran catches Chuaning and is like, Shizun, are you okay? Shizun is completely embarrassed and is like, I'm fine, of course I'm fine. But Moran actually gets the hint and decides not to dwell on it, and he actually helps Shizun learn how to farm the rice. So they get to it, and Shizun actually gets accomplished at it. He learns how to do it pretty well, and by the end of the day, they've gotten a big pile of rice plants heaped up into a mountain. And so it's time to have dinner or lunch, I guess, either or. It's time for a meal. They go to join the villagers to eat, and unfortunately, the meat is full of chili peppers. It's really, really spicy, but Chuaning doesn't want to offend the host, so he eats it but ends up regretting it immediately because he cannot handle spice and he ends up coughing up a lung. And so Moran's like, oh no, Shizun! But then he turns and looks at Chuaning's face with his watery eyes and him panting, and then Moran's like, oh no, Shizun, because he starts having flashbacks to his past life when he had entangled with Chuaning. And so he's his mind is in the gutter right now. Chuaning's mind is in the gutter a little bit too. Their minds are both not in the right place right now. They're kind of distracted. But Moran's constantly chanting the mantra, respect Shizun, respect Shizun. Have no dirty thoughts about him. Respect Shizun. And Chuaning is like, how improper. I cannot believe I have these thoughts about my disciple. So yeah, let's continue on with the next chapter and see how they deal with these impure thoughts. Okay. Chapter 137. Shizun and I get put up as guests. The tips of Moran's fingers were a little shaky, and his heart felt like it was going to beat right out of his chest. The worst thing about men was that the head between their legs never listened to the head on their shoulders. Regardless of how much he really, truly, wholeheartedly did not want to, it still grew hot and hard, making him feel numb and prickly all over. Oh my gosh, Moran, really, it is not the time. In public? Moran, right now? In public? You're acting up? Okay. Cursing himself under his breath, he adjusted his sitting position so that no one would see before leaning over to ladle out another bowl of soup for Chuaning. But then, his fingertip brushed against Chuaning's as he reached over to hand him the bowl. The contact sent a jolt through his spine that made his hand quiver, spilling a little of the soup. Chuaning frowned a little, but had rather more pressing concerns to care for all that much. Wait, let me say that again. Chuaning frowned a little, but had rather more pressing concerns than to care all that much. He took the soup and downed it to ease the spicy numbness in his mouth. Next to him, Moran stared speechlessly at his lips that were a vivid shade of red from the spice, like a ripe fruit hidden between leaves, or a vibrant blossom upon a branch. Lips that, if kissed, would be soft, warm, moist. Pah! Moran slapped himself none too gently. Caught by surprise, everyone stared at him wordlessly. Finally coming back down to earth, Moran cleared his throat awkwardly and said in a hoarse voice, there was a mosquito on my face. Ayo! A clear female voice made itself known and began to raise a fuss. Autumn mosquitoes are the worst. Just looking to suck enough blood to get through the winter. Did Xianjun bring any medicinal salve? Huh? Moran looked toward the source of the voice, a bit caught off guard. The speaker was a fetching young woman, her comely figure dressed in a blue coat and her shiny black hair brushed into a braid. She had a pretty face and fair skin, but when they made eye contact, her gaze was anything but shy as she made eyes at him. Moran didn't even get the drift, only thinking, oh, it's the lady who was singing earlier. He might be slow, but the auntie sitting next to the lass wasn't. As someone who'd already had 7 kids, she could read these little missies like open books, and so she followed through without missing a beat. They're only here for a little while to help with the harvest. Of course they didn't bother to bring any medicinal salve. Ling go bring him a jar of it later. The last called Ling beamed happily. Of course, I'll come by tonight with it. Oh dear, Ling is flirting with Moran. Moran doesn't seem to notice though, but I feel like Chuaning would notice. ... Moran hadn't even gotten a word in yet, and this enthusiastic pair of women had already decided for him between themselves, leaving him a little speechless. He turned to look towards Chuaning, just in time to see him taking out a handkerchief and slowly wiping the spilled soup from his hand, a touch of distaste in his expression. Moran was not good at dealing with women, so he said to Chuaning in a small voice, "Some of the soup got on my hand too. Let me borrow the handkerchief when you're done." So Chuaning handed him the handkerchief, the same high-tongue embroidered one that he had before. Moran remembered him carrying it around back at the Peach Blossom Springs too. Chuaning looked cold and distant, but was actually a sentimental person, something that Moran had already noticed in a past life, in the way that the type of clothing he wore and the decor in his room stayed more or less the same throughout the years. He just hadn't expected it to extend to even his handkerchief. The handkerchief was so old that the color of the embroidery had already begun to dull, but this nostalgic person still hadn't tossed it. Moran wiped his hand, then took another look at the handkerchief. Upon closer inspection, he was surprised to find that although the flower was carefully embroidered, the needlework was rather poor, clearly the work of a beginner. Thinking that Shizun must have done it himself when he was bored once, and mentally visualizing the way he must have looked, all serious and deadpan while stitching the high-tongue flower with a tiny little needle, Moran couldn't help wanting to laugh. He wanted to look some more, but Chuaning took back the handkerchief. Moran said, "What are you taking it away for? I'll wash it." "I can wash it myself," Chuaning replied as he picked his bowl up once again. Moran was not about to watch him tempt fate again, and so he hastily swapped their bowls, saying, "Here, eat this bowl instead. I haven't touched it." The village chief's wife hurriedly agreed. "It's all right if Xianjun can't handle spicy foods. No worries, no worries." Chuaning pressed his lips into a line. Then, after a moment, lowered his eyes and said, "Sorry about that," before exchanging bowls with Moran. With Chuaning's bowl and chopsticks in hand, Moran was just about to dig in when it struck him that Chuaning had already eaten from it, and his heart, suddenly all soft and warm, started pounding for some reason. He picked up a piece of marbled meat and put it in his mouth, the chopsticks just barely scraping past his teeth, sliding past his lip. What improper, preposterous thing hadn't he done with Chuaning in the past life? But in this life, just the touch of chopsticks he'd used against his own tongue, the bowl he'd eaten from held against his own lips, just this, and he could already hardly contain the flame within. It's not even an indirect kiss, because Moran's like, "Oh no, me eating from Shizun's chopsticks is an indirect kiss." Even Chuaning wouldn't think of it like that, right? Moran 2.0 has turned into a blushing maiden. Regardless of how harshly he admonished himself, how many times he told himself not to think indecent things about his pure, virtuous Shizun, it was like his heart wasn't even his. He could make himself not touch him, but he couldn't make himself not think about him. He had long since stopped hating Chuaning, but he had thought that, after peeling away the hatred, what remained of his feelings towards Shizun would only be respect and the desire to cherish. But it seemed he was wrong. What was revealed when the black veil of hatred fell had actually been tender affection and scalding desire. He drifted in the ocean of desire, wanted to cling to the driftwood called rationality until he could climb ashore, but just one glance from Chuaning, one lightly spoken word, was enough to pull him back into the abyss of yearning. He felt like he had truly gone mad. Chuaning wasn't into men, so Moran would sooner die than he would touch him, bully him. "Are you sure about that, Moran? Are you sure Chuaning isn't into men?" And so the desire in him burned until it was a blazing inferno, swelled until it was a vast ocean, and he, drowning and burning, had little care to spare for anything other than the person in front of him, this pure person who filled his impure thoughts. The autumn breeze picked up, bringing with it the fragrance of the harvest and a chorus of frog song, and in this moment, sitting next to him, Moran suddenly thought, absurdly, ridiculously, that it wouldn't be bad to spend the rest of their lives like this. He used to feel like he had nothing, and so fought for everything like his life depended on it, but now he felt like he had everything and dared not ask for more. The busy season of farmers lasted a little over half a month, during which Chuaning and Moran stayed at Yuliang village. The little village could spare 2 rooms for each, though it wasn't exactly well off, so the place was rather barren. The village chief's wife gritted her teeth and fished out 2 thick mattresses for them, only to have her offer declined in unison. Chuaning said, "You can just sleep on the straw. It's warm enough. Please keep the mattresses for yourselves." Moran agreed with a smile. "We're cultivators after all. Can't just take your bedding like that." The village chief was guilt-ridden as he said over and over, "We're really sorry about this. We have more mattresses before, but the village caught on fire last year when we were beset by an evil spirit, and a lot of things." Chuaning said, "It's all right." The village chief and his wife finally left tremulously after some more consoling. Moran set about adjusting Chuaning's bed, packing more straw under the padding in hopes of making it softer, looking rather like a dog busily dragging cushions and pillows to its nest. Chuaning looked on mildly from where he was leaning against the side of the table, and said, "That's good enough already. Any more and I'll be sleeping in a haystack instead of a bed." A little embarrassed, Moran scratched his head and said, "There wasn't any time today, but tomorrow I'll go to the nearby market and buy Shizun a proper mattress." And am I supposed to do all the farm work while you go to the market?" Chuaning shot him a glare. "Just leave it, it's fine." He walked over and took in the scent as he spoke. "It has that nice grain smell." Moran protested. "No way! Shizun is no good with the cold. You can't just—" "It's not even winter yet." Chuaning frowned. "What is all this fuss? Go back to your room already. It's been a long day. I can't even feel my feet anymore. I'm going to bed." Moran left obediently. Chuaning took his shoes off, haphazardly rinsed his feet with water from the large clay jar, and was just about to climb into his straw bed when he heard knocking at the door. Moran had come back and was yelling from the outside, "Shizun, I'm coming in!" ... Chuaning was furious. "Didn't I tell you not to say that to me anymore?" But Moran only grinned and bumped the door open, with his head as Chuaning wait. Sorry, I'm like tongue-tied today. I'm like saying things over and over again too. But Moran only grinned and bumped the door open with his head as Chuaning fumed. He couldn't push the door open otherwise, because both his hands, with sleeves rolled up to the elbows to reveal firm, sexy arms the color of honey, were busy holding a bucket full of clear water with steam rising from it. The young man's eyes seemed especially bright behind the steam, practically sparkling. Chuaning's heart raced under his gaze, and he found himself at a sudden loss for words. Moran carried the heavy bucket of water over and set it down next to his bed. And then, he said, face glowing and dimples warm, "Shizun, you worked too hard today. Soak your feet first. Then let me give you a foot rub before you go to sleep." A foot rub? That's so intimate. Wow, okay. I thought Moran said he wasn't going to touch Chuaning anymore, and now he's like, "Shizun, please give me your feet so I can wash them." No. I know. Shizun's gonna say no need. Moran said with a smile, "There is a need. It's your first time doing farm work. You're going to be all achy all over. If you can't get a good night's rest because of that, then you can't get up tomorrow. The little kids in the village are going to make fun of you again." The water in the wooden bucket was hot, just a little bit too hot, but not unbearably so. Chuaning's bare feet sat in the water, the toes smooth and delicate, the lines of his ankles flowing and defined. His feet never saw the sun, and so the skin there was fair, pale, and even. Moran mused about how nice Chuaning's skin was as he took it all in, even fairer and smoother than that of delicate ladies. Thinking about it now, even that woman Song Chu-tong, whom he'd married in the past life, hadn't felt as nice as Chuaning did. Bah, what was he thinking about? So while Chuaning soaked his feet, Moran sat down at the table across the room and took out a book to read. He'd brought the book along himself, some dry tome about healing spells. It was so quiet in the room that they both subconsciously slowed down their breathing so that the other wouldn't hear. In the room lit by a single candle, The only sound was that of Chuaning's feet occasionally moving in the water. I'm done soaking. It doesn't ache anymore. You can go now. But Moran was persistent. He knew better now than to take Chuaning at his word when he said things like, it doesn't hurt, and I'm fine, and had already put down his book and come over to Chuaning's bed to kneel down on one leg, grabbing the foot that Chuaning tried to pull back and looking up at him with eyes that were not going to take no for an answer. I'll go after I give Shizun a foot rub. ... Chuaning really wanted to kick him so that he would get the hell out and stop saying whatever the F he wanted to in front of himself. But the hand gripping him was so strong, the skin a little rough, and the calluses at the pads of the fingers and between the thumb and forefinger rubbed against his foot, where the skin was extra sensitive from soaking in the hot water, so much so that it felt a little ticklish, and he was so busy trying not to laugh that he missed his last opportunity to pick up his dignity and kick Moran out. Half kneeling on the floor, Moran had already put his foot on his knee and began to massage it, gently and carefully, his eyes lowered in concentration. Shizun, was it cold in the paddy field? He asked while massaging. It was all right. There's tons of dead branches and stuff in there. Look, you got scratched on the side here. ... Chuaning looked over at the side of his right foot, and sure enough, there was a small cut there. It's just a scratch. Doesn't even feel like anything. Moran insisted. I packed some herbal ointment for such things. Wait here a moment, Shizun. I'll go grab it and put it on for you. Auntie made it so it's really good. It'll be all healed up by morning. He walked out of the door as he talked, toward his room that was right across Chuaning's, separated by a small courtyard that was only a dozen or so steps wide, and came back in no time with a small jar of sweet-smelling ointment. You know, Moran has a point though. If Chuaning has a scratch on his foot and he doesn't treat it, it might get infected, especially if he puts his bare feet into the paddy fields again. So, good thinking, Moran. Chuaning always forgets to take care of his own health, so Moran has to smother him with love and pampering and caring. Isn't this a bit of an overreaction? Of course not! What if it gets infected? Come here, Shizun, give me your foot! Chuaning felt a little awkward about it. In all the years he'd lived, his feet had always been a private part, since he'd always been fully dressed and never gone anywhere barefoot as a matter of course. There was a part of him that barely anyone had ever seen, and no one had ever touched. It is said that the unknowing are fearless. He'd let Moran give him a foot rub earlier because he hadn't known what it would feel like, not having expected the tender aching feeling, like getting gnawed at by ants. So now he was a little hesitant about giving him his foot again. So Moran stared at that pair of feet hiding hesitantly under the robes, pale white feet with a bloom of rosiness from their soak in the hot water. Chuaning's toes were fine and delicate, with nails that were translucent like the thin layer of ice upon the surface of a lake in the depth of winter, and a light pink blush of color at the tips of the toes from the soak, like budding haitang blossoms frozen beneath the ice. Okay, Moran, you have such a really detailed description of Chuaning's feet. Moran has a Chuaning foot fetish confirmed? Moran knelt back down, his expression gentle and respectful as he took the warm haitang flower in hand. He could feel the haitang trembling minutely in his hand, petals quivering, and he was struck by the sudden urge to lower his head and press a kiss to it, so that it wouldn't hesitate or be afraid, so that it might blossom and unfold. Yes, Moran wants to kiss Chuaning's foot. Moran has a foot fetish confirmed. Okay, good to know, I guess. Shizun. What is it? There seemed to be a raw quality to Chuaning's voice, like the branches of a flowering tree laden with the weight of desire, the blossoms on the verge of giving way, droplets of dew just about to fall upon parched soil. Moran's head snapped up, the candle flame choosing that exact moment to crackle, setting free a burst of sparks as a small stream of candle wax dripped slowly down. His gaze met Chuaning's by chance, both their eyes bright in the light of the candle, with desire, with hunger. You... Chuaning dropped his gaze and said mildly, "Get on with it, my feet are ticklish." Moran's entire face went red, but luckily it wasn't too visible through his tan. He mumbled an acknowledgement and lowered his head back down to apply the ointment, the blush burning all the way to his ears. But he couldn't help hearing, "Get on with it," repeated over and over in his head. He swallowed, eyes fixed on the soft skin. Images from the past surfaced in his mind, becoming clear, coming into focus. He remembered the disheveled bedding in Wushan Palace, and the way Chuaning had looked all the fairer against those scarlet sheets, the way they had entangled like caged beasts, neck against neck, heavy breaths and low groans filling the hall with a ferocious, savage kind of tension. He thought about Chuaning's muted moans, that icy voice melted into softly flowing water by the flames of desire, heated into a boil. Stop this nonsense. Ah. He could almost hear Chuaning's voice by his ear. Moran squeezed his eyes shut, furrowed his brows deep. In this moment, he finally realized something. It wasn't going to be easy for him to be good to Chuaning. If he were to keep his distance, he wouldn't be able to take good care of him, keep him warm. But if he were to stay close, he might not be able to control the flame of desire within. He was afraid that his rationality might catch on fire in a moment of carelessness, that he might do something outrageous. He wanted him, wanted to bed him. Even in this very moment, he suddenly thought that what he wanted to do wasn't to be kneeling here, giving Chuaning foot rubs and applying ointment to his cuts. This person was sitting right in front of him, on the bed, and his own strength now was already no different from what it had been in the past. Chuaning wouldn't be able to push him off. He wanted to take him, wanted to push him down onto the bed, wanted it so bad his throat felt parched, wanted it so bad it burned and ached. He wanted to kiss the breath out of Chuaning. He wanted... All done, Shizun! He practically yelled out, startling Chuaning. Only Moran himself knew of the cold sweat drenching his back. He suddenly felt so miserable. Why couldn't he just be good to Shizun in a clean, genuine way? Why couldn't he just be rid of this burning desire? Chuaning. His Shizun was the loftiest person in the world. If he were to find out that his own disciple felt thus toward him, how disdainful would he be? How scornful! It had been 2 lifetimes already. He didn't want to be looked at with scorn by him anymore. Chuaning put his shoes back on. The whole time, Moran sat to the side with his head lowered wordlessly, looking rather like an obedient, docile dog. Only he himself knew of the insatiable wolf locked up inside. A long moment passed before Moran managed to suppress the burning in his chest. He said, "Shizun, rest well. If you feel unwell at all tomorrow, then please just rest. I can do both our shares of work." Before Chuaning could reply, a delicate-sounding voice rang out from the outside. Mo Xianjun, are you there?" Uh-oh. Ling from before is coming to bring Moran some medicinal ointment. Moran doesn't realize that she wants to flirt with him, but Chuaning might end up drinking some vinegar tomorrow, in tomorrow's chapter. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Okay, author's notes. Mini theater. If the main cast transmigrated to the modern day, what occupations might they have based on their skills? Shizun. First, he'll be valedictorian of Lanxiang Vocational School, then become a mechanic who operates excavators and operators. Oh right, speaking of which, I swear if I write a modern BL in the future, I will write a CEO who drives a tractor. I've had enough of CEOs who drive Lamborghinis and Ferraris. If they don't drive a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, is it not a BL about CEOs? I'm so angry. I want the CEO to drive a tractor. I want to write about him driving a tractor. Chuaning, you are the protagonist in a BL about CEOs. Drive your tractor. Bump into someone's Ferrari. Go! It looks like Meatbun has something against Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Just as a word of note, Meatbun has indeed written a modern BL. She's currently writing it right now. It is still ongoing. It's called Case File Compendium, aka Binganbun. And there's no CEO in it, unfortunately. Well, no, the main Gong is a college student who is from a rich family, but he's not a CEO. And then the show is an older man. He is a refined psychiatrist. So it's a college student ex-psychiatrist is the main couple. So no CEO driving a tractor, unfortunately, but still a really, really good story. Okay, dog. Dog would be a chef, valedictorian of New East Cuisine Education, a chef who drives a Porsche, happens to be a couple with the CEO who drives a tractor. Not bad, not bad. Can you imagine Chuaning driving a tractor, though? I cannot. He's good at machinery, but I can't imagine him actually operating a tractor. Shuemeng doesn't know anything, will probably die. That's so mean. Shuemeng would obviously be like a socialite, right? He'd be one of those rich kids that socializes in society, you know, lives off his parents' money, probably inherits the CEO position from his father, or chairman position, you know? Shimei, selling counterfeit medicine. What? Selling counterfeit medication is easier to earn money, but he has a good conscience and might not bear to do so. He'll probably go bankrupt in the end. Shimei? I feel like Shimei would just be a regular old doctor, right? Selling counterfeit medication? Yewangshi, a cop. Sounds about right. Meihan Shui, a gigolo. Yes, also sounds about right. He'd be like a gigolo or a pimp. Or maybe, like a host, working at like a host club. And finally, Nan Gongzi, a pet shop owner. If this really doesn't work out, the superintendent at a pig farm is fine too. Nan Gongzi, I guess, really likes pets. I know he really likes his dog, his wolf, but pet shop owner? He doesn't seem to have the temperament to run a pet shop. Maybe a veterinarian, I guess? Huh. Okay, interesting. Thanks for the insight, Meatbun. But yeah, to recap chapter 137, Chuaning and Moran, you know, head in for the night, and Chuaning is tired, he just wants to go to bed, but Moran stops by and says, Shizun, let me wash and massage your feet for you. Now, Chuaning is like, hey, back up. That's a little too intimate, okay? No one has ever seen my feet and my ankles before. What do you think you're doing? Moran's like, I want to just make Shizun comfortable. I'm gonna massage his feet and, you know, make sure that his feet are not tired so that he can work efficiently tomorrow. But the moment he sees Chuaning's feet, he has a total meltdown. He ends up like daydreaming about how delicate his ankles are and how soft and beautiful Chuaning's toes are. He ends up exposing himself as a person with a foot fetish, specifically a person with a Chuaning foot fetish. And then he massages Chuaning's feet and it's like, oh no, there's a cut! So he gets medicine for it. Chuaning is feeling embarrassed because he's never had someone touch his feet before like that. But if you think Chuaning is going through it, then Moran is definitely going through it more because he ends up, again, having more flashbacks to the past about entangling with Chuaning, and he can't even hold himself back from touching Chuaning's feet. He's like, oh no, I thought that after the misunderstandings were cleared, I would be able to just genuinely respect and cherish Shizun, but it turns out I've had romantic and lustful feelings towards Shizun all along. How am I going to be good to Shizun? If I stay away, I can't take care of him, but if I stay too close, I might pounce on him. What am I going to do? So, good luck, Moran. He's finally having the realization that he indeed loves Chuaning, everything about him. Chuaning is slowly learning about that more. I mean, he knows that he loves Moran, but he's learning more about the lustful side of himself. And so the two of them are just in this really awkward rom-com situation right now. But at the end of the chapter, Linger stopped by to give Moran some medication, and I feel like there's going to be some vinegar happening in the next chapter. So, I hope you guys enjoyed today's read-along. I apologize for how tongue-tied I got. I ended up saying a bunch of words wrong and like repeating sentences, but you know, it's how it is sometimes. But yeah, again, like I said at the beginning, 7 Seas Entertainment has licensed Urha, so the fan translation will be taken down by the end of March. So I might not be able to get through all 160 chapters before the end of the month. Therefore, if you want to read ahead, please do. I have the link to the fan TL in the description. Go ahead and check it out and find out what happens up to chapter 160. But yeah, other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!